Hi all and welcome to the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. My name's Thomas Williams. A fairly hectic day, hectic week for this show. The show going out tonight is the third time it's been rewritten because of certain things, and I've managed to cobble together something that resembles a show, and I'm no doubt many of you will enjoy it. Perhaps not as much as last Saturday's show. I hope your heads have stopped spinning from that as we went a bit deep, just a tiny bit. And whilst you are recovering from that show, I was pondering and writing an op-ed piece, like a synopsis of that show, which turned into a 5,000 or 5,500 word piece, and too big for this show, and so I'm now preparing a sequel to last Saturday's show, which was called You Are Not Ones and Zeros, You Are the Light, which kind of adds to my workload, but it is what it is. So look forward to that coming out. It will not be as intense as part one, but it'll still go deep into many things, including some new fields of information. Right, let's get into tonight's show. Slightly different, much less news, reduced intel for sensitive reasons, which is why today's show was written, or certainly a portion of today's show was written for the third time this week. But tonight's show is going to cover a lot of our current ills of people not thinking before speaking or writing, people falling for the several divisive programs ran on us globally, who are doing it, and a warning also of what is to come and what we are at. Now, we at THI have put extensive hours into negate those divisive programs and also to prepare us for this time and also our future. But then we come to the other end of the spectrum. People acting important, not doing important work. There is a difference, and an important one to grasp. But alas, some see it as an opportunity to challenge people who they perceive as being in more important positions than them, who then insert themselves into situations for their own self-importance, whilst contributing nothing to any solutions, just mired only in drama. The latest of which is Randall Kaiser. His title, Anna von Reitz and Jesper Ellerman Lackey Boy. Seems to me anyway. Now apparently Mr. Kaiser thinks our show is a load of crap and is also pure propaganda. And I'm sure his 40 to 50 listeners to his podcast may agree with that, or maybe they won't. So clearly Mr. Kaiser's not liking me or THI. Fine by me. But why join THI then? Because the lure of money and funding always brings these type of people out, in many cases out from the gutter. Randall feels Kim and Anna von Rights need to work together, and he appears to have self-appointed himself a position to tell Kim what she should and shouldn't do. Keep running with that, Randall, and it won't end well, I promise you. The world is full of people telling others what to do, and too few doing the work themselves, THI accepted. Which is why Mr. Kaiser didn't last too long in our group. Randall appears to live in a soundproof booth and hears nothing, and also a darkened room as he sees nothing. Kim tried twice to work with her. Anna tried to steal the funds. But Randall can't hear that, it seems, and likes to work with people who want to put their hand in the cookie jar and take things that belongs to everybody else. Randall thinks Kim should work with Anna. This is the same Anna who publicly admitted to blocking the trust funds for the people. Her words, not mine. So Randall, what have you got to say for that? Anna is the same person who spent the last few years calling Kim everything under the sun, but the latest fake Jesus incarnate, Randall Kaiser, thinks we should ignore all that and just carry on. We went from Kim is not the trustee to she is. Then she stole the trust. That also didn't exist at some point. She is dead. She is a man. She's a cold-hearted bitch. To she is my cousin. All lovely, conducive words to engineering a working harmonic relationship, isn't it, Randall? Not. So here is the latest rendition of the Diary of a Madwoman, a genetics-based interbreeding experiment within the same family that has clearly had its effects in this generation. Listen closely now, Randall. Quote, but Kim is an AI-controlled eugenics experiment, and they can override her brain at will, tell her what to do and what not to do. Must be Mr. Kaiser. And she will do it, because the left half of her brain is largely separated from the right half of her brain, as you can readily determine by doing a brain scan on her. Unquote. Desperate claims, desperate tactics, desperate woman. Can't produce facts, and so write shit. Well, that failed again. Newsflash, Randall, before you make more of a fool of yourself than you already have. Fact 1. Anna von Reitz works for the system, always has and always will do. Fact 2. Anna is not interested in the people, as proven by blocking the trust funds. Fact 3. Anna has asked for proof of claims, or was asked for proof of claims, and she rejected it. Fact 4. Is it not significant, Randall, that the funds she is claiming are all for the bloodline families, of which she is one of them, the very same people who looted the trust under Kim's predecessor? They did nothing for the people except harvesters. Fox in charge of the henhouse has never worked too well, Mr. Kaiser. Fact 5. She is fond of asking who appointed Kim, which has been answered several times, but refuses to answer who appointed her. There are your facts, Mr. Kaiser, and it's time you stepped out of your darkened, soundproof existence and into the light of reality. As for Anna, once a Habsburg, always a Rothschild, is all I have to say. So this is from Kim. Please name publicly all of Kim's alleged controllers and all members of the group she allegedly is a member of. Further, please post publicly all documentation and evidence in your possession which states the following. 1. Any evidence linking Kim to any virus in China. 2. All brain scans which indicate that him is bioengineered, which you have in your possession. 3. All the names of the former trustees in proper legal format, with each and every one of them signed and notarized attestation with identification of their claim to any property, with proof Kim currently holds this property. Assets, accounts, cash, land. And proof of the existence of the said asset in question, with all legal documentation showing that they were trustees beneficiaries and or owners with their name clearly stated on said documents. Any vague information such as Indian tribe or descendants of X is not legal proper form and will be disregarded. If you cannot substantiate any claims, please remove this post, as then it is clearly a defamation of character and shall be treated accordingly. It's unbelievable. But it's a sign, for me anyway, whilst it's frustrating, and in some cases unpleasant, the things these people are calling Kim, who have done nothing for humanity. Absolutely zero. Just fighting for fake titles and self-importance. But the old adage is you can't please all of the people all of the time. Has raised its head a bit in our group as well, and a bit too frequent for my liking recently, which is wasting my time and vast amounts of time of the admins. Now, one of the latest complaints is I don't cover topical things like the impeachment, 5G, chemtrails, geoengineering or vaccines. Okay? But I have a question back. Do these same people complain to other shows of why they don't cover the near 100 topics that I do? Now, regular listeners will all know, unless you've got a Randall Kaiser soundproof booth, that is not the case. But for some it appears, despite me covering more topics and countries than any other show, it's never enough. Now, some, it appears, to think that I'm their personal teacher, as despite doing a packed 3-hour show plus each week, which takes roughly 6 to 10 times longer than that to produce. For reference, a single must listen to show take 80 to 100 hours to complete before going on air. But then some people think I should be on standby for Q&A sections after every show, or every time I turn on Facebook or MeWe. It's a lack of consideration. Doing this show at this time means I miss normal dinner, which is only done after the show, after posting the archive following the end of the show. Do people not consider that? Now, 90% plus of the questions I get asked were actually answered in the shows themselves. I've been looking through the chat and some of the questions that were asked this week on the Facebook, and they were all answered in the show. Over 90% of them. Now, I spend a lot of my time producing these shows, whilst also running the People's Club, research for the shows, answering to Facebook and MeWe, admin on both pages, dealing with trolls and people who clearly don't think before they write. All the emails, and that is before I do any work for or have meetings with Kim. Plus other hidden work. Where's my time to eat? Or think? And then we have people asking for one-on-one calls, or to review their proposal or discuss their proposals. Lengthy emails to answer. Now, those emails, I apologise to who have sent emails and I haven't responded. There's only me who opens those emails, and I can only get to open them emails twice a week now. And even then, I have limited time to answer them. But I do think at times some people demand far too much from me. and I'm asking people to stop and think for a bit. Now, as for the claims, I personally don't think I need to give my opinion on vaccines again. I think I've made it quite clear. But for clarity of those who ask, I do not trust a single vaccine, which I've repeated in tens of shows. Chemtrails. Yes, they continue, but the great question is, what are they doing? It clearly doesn't affect 99.9999% of the people. Because after 40 years of spraying, 40 years plus I might add, we're all still alive. So one can deduce from that whatever they are doing is clearly not working. Or it's not as dangerous as some of the alt media people make out. Now, Kim was told by the council that people are immune to them in 99.999 recurring % of cases. So that then should end that topic, unless you like to be put in fear. Chemtrails is old news. Why is it still running? As for geoengineering, I warned about it in 2014. In fact, I warned about it earlier in my very first must listen to show, The Future of Humanity. I warned Californians they were being pushed out of the state back in 2014, and since warned people of Chicago, Miami, New York and several other large cities of the same event. I did an extensive piece on the geoengineering of California and the fires. It was a fairly lengthy op-ed piece. And I also warned of the countries and states connected to the Gulf of Mexico, Puerto Rico being the most obvious one. But it seems that's not enough. 5G, oh dear. Again, people can ask questions of me, and I'm entitled to ask questions back. Where was the fear for 1, 2, 3 or 4G? And you get crickets. But if people are going to demand answers from me, it's only fair that I'm allowed to ask questions back, is it not? But the sick irony of it all is that the people asking and making bad comments against my opinion on 5G are mostly doing it from their phone. The irony is not lost. So if you really don't like 5G, your simple stance on it is get rid of your phones. Because if people don't have mobile phones, which is essentially a spy and track piece of technology, then there is no 5G. So what we can deduce from that is, you want me to talk of the dangers of 5G, but you won't take your own stance and responsibility for the reasons it is being implemented in the first place by keeping your phone. Is 5G dangerous? It has the potential to be. Like all technology, like this show's warned several times, almost every piece of technology introduced is weaponized against us in some way. Is it as dangerous as the alt media makes out? No. The top and bottom line of it is this show and the host has discounted a plethora of the fear-based narratives that has come out of the alt media. From various viruses, we've all heard the names, Ebola, H1N1, AIDS, etc., 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 on and on it goes. The zombie virus, Jade Helm, remember that? Other drills, FEMA camps, people roundups, of which we've just done another discounting of that from another ex-clown. Guillotine trains, remember them? Muslim training camps, we're all gonna die. The UN on our soil several times. The Russians and Chinese are on our soil and are coming to get us. The list goes on and on and on. I discounted all of them. And do the people stop and think, you know, he was correct on all of those. Perhaps his stance may be correct on those topics just covered. But the problem is people who buy into these fear porn based programs. It's not me, but themselves. Mired in fear, which is a low frequency vibration. If you're going to do that, you may as well have stayed asleep than awakening. And the question to ask yourselves is, does it make sense? Fear makes people ill. It's the most common cause of heart disease, not smoking. So fear makes people ill. Do you not understand that? You get ill or stressed, you buy and take their pills, which makes you more ill, and you then go and buy and take more of their pills. Jump off the hamster wheel for source sakes. I will not be changing my stance, and I will not put our listeners in unnecessary fears because a certain few revel in it. It is not conducive to personal growth. Never was, never will be. And the gist of these shows is, and it's not just an outlet for the trust funding some people think it is. Far from it. Money will not help people mired in their own victimhood fears of we're all going to die. It just won't. Money's not helped the Rothschilds, has it? Or the other top-end people with lots of money. They're all crapping themselves. Why? Because the people are coming for them. We know it, and they know it. And that is my stance, and I'm sticking to it. There will be no fear porn on our show. We'll be back shortly. Fear is the liar. It's also dangerous and damaging. You're not going to have soul growth or development or spiritual growth with fear. It's complete opposite. But you have clickbait shows on YouTube with regular shows of we're all going to die, from one fabrication to another that generates income. I'm not here to generate income. I'm here to tell the truth to the best of my ability and the information available. Fear helps no one, and we've had enough of it. Particularly Americans. Christ, you know, some half-witted retard came up with the idea that to save children from a nuclear blast, you jump under a desk. And everyone followed it. Or the Russians have been coming since the 1960s. What are they on? The slow boat to China? Seriously. Doesn't help anyone. Right, where are we going next? We're going to discuss the People's Club financials, which was posted this week. And this is more for the benefit of people who are not on MeWe or Facebook. We have listeners all around the world, so some of them don't like social media. So, from the sheet, left to right, we have the donations received, office expenses, the donations that were sent out, and the filing fees, which I'll explain in a minute. Bank charges, because our bank account was below 1,500. That will end now. And the end column is the web show or advertisement of the group. Now, the $49.99 is for this Spreaker platform, which was voted on and agreed by the members back in 2017. So that explains that. The donations received in the past year was $7,042. There was no office expenses. Now, the donations sent out, there was two recorded. One was for a laptop for one of the members who required it for work, essential work. I won't mention names. And the first one was a spur of the moment. A lady who had a few kids in her car had broken down and run out of gas, and the People's Club helped her, and that was $27. Now, the filing and the fees are a range of the website hosting, the registration agent, which you must have as a non-for-profit, and that's $900 alone a year. And then you have filings for the IRS, which I do, and filings for the states that it were represented in. So that came to just short of $2,000, $1,937, $100 for the bank charges, which will not be occurring anymore, and roughly $700 for the show and the advertisement. And so we started off with $1,453 and ended up with $5,348, which has now gone to $9,500 in the first month. So, because December's, there's two gaps in it of no donations going in August and none in November, and that's because I did bank them in time for that month. The figures are taken off the bank statements. So August and September was rolled into one and banked in September, and the December one was the collection for November, and the January, which you can't see, it's this year, was December's. There's two in January. That's why it's now 9,585, I think it is. So we also, I hope that people understand that. So we were asked two questions: the fees and the filing fees, including the TPC licenses, filing fees for the state, the agent registration fee, and some of the website host fees are also included for that, and the domain name and license to keep the People's Club name protected. Now, there are some fees that are not paid out by the People's Club, like an accountant, because I do it all, and some of the filings are also not paid out of the People's Club, as some of them I'm able to do myself to keep the fees down. So what is a registered agent? Well, every company has to have a registered agent, and ours is Harbour Compliance. They do a portion of the filings, but not the taxes or the tax filing. I do the tax filing for the People's Club also. Now, one of our members this month has fell on hard times due to several issues that echoes throughout America, despite the glossy picture painted at times in the State of the Union address on Tuesday, which I will cover later. But she reached out, and I was able to help her with some funds from the People's Club in consultation with Holly, the other director, and I also chipped in a bit from my own Patreon as well to help her out. And this is what the People's Club is all about. Nothing more and nothing less, despite the fake claims of our detractors. Caring and sharing for each other. For too long now, we have all left each other out to hang for far too long. And it's time we all lifted each other up. Now, I'm more than delighted at the contributions to my Patreon, and more so for the People's Club from our members. You know, the donations went up 50% this year. But I'm going to appeal to the members to step up, not to put their hands in their pockets anymore. Like I said, we're more than happy with the members who have put in. I'm not asking you to put your hands deeper into your own pockets, but I'm asking you to speak to family members, friends, work colleagues, church meetings or sporting events, and ask people from the outside of THI to donate $1 a week or $1 a month, or whatever figure they choose. This not only increases the funds to help people more, but it's also a way of free advertising of what we are doing here, and reach out to the people wherever you go and ask them to not only contribute $1 a week or $1 a month or whatever amount they wish to do. You know, they can sign up for a direct debit. So, you know, it's not about they have to remember each week or each month that they're putting in. But ask them to speak to their friends and their circle and their family as well. And the idea of it is so we can have a foundation in this country that does what it says on the tin. A hand up, not a hand out. Today, Holly and I had a discussion. We've been discussing it for a bit now. And we came to a conclusion. Was we had a vacancy for a director position for the People's Club. And I'm pleased to announce that has been awarded to Michelle Hansack. So congratulations to her, and we welcome her on board. I'm sure you will all agree with that decision. There was several other candidates that were mentioned, but those logistically, in some cases, certainly in 2 cases, were UK based and made it more difficult, and I will be looking for them to be running things in the UK rather than America, and some others, 2 others will be in the second phase of the People's Club, and they're more suited to that than this role. So congratulations to Michelle. Right, we're going to get into some news. Like I said, we had the State of the Union speech, and whilst I agree there has been some progress in some areas, for the vast amount of Americans, little to nothing has changed. and it was a tad disappointing in some aspects. The impeachment has also been reached to its predicted conclusion, also this week, and we'll have more on them later. Sign of the times. Facebook stock fell as much as 8% last Thursday after it reported fourth quarter earnings on the Wednesday evening. And the drop erased more than $50 billion from the social media giant's market cap. Now, the shares recovered slightly by mid-morning and closed down 6%, and the stock's worst day since June of 2019, when it fell 7.5%. Now, the decline comes after Facebook reported a 51% rise in expenses. I wonder what that is. Payoffs. And they described the expenses were largely related to the company's privacy and security improvements. Oh my. And it also coincides with a drop in the company's operating margin, which fell from 45% to 34%. And in addition to increased expenses, Facebook also warned of advertising headwinds related to privacy and regulatory changes that were on the horizon, which will lead to slowing growth in the US Facebook. And the privacy improvements on Apple's iPhones and Google's Android software could hurt its ability to target advertising. There's your answer of why you don't watch Superb Owls programs. It's just one giant advertisement. If no one watches, no one's going to pay for them. Now, in a note to investors Thursday, Pivotal Research Group reduced its rating from buy to hold on those advertising concerns regarding Facebook, and it lowered its target price from $215 from $245. And it said the slowdown in particular in the US was far greater than we expected and sounds likely to persist. TikTok. There's the latest. We're all going to die. But this is indicative of the way certain people think. It makes me want to pull out my MeWe GIF, to be quite honest. But the Commerce Secretary, Wilbur Ross, said last Thursday the coronavirus outbreak that began in Wuhan, China, and has killed at least 170 people, could, quote, be positive news for the US economy, unquote. Doesn't matter if people die, as long as the money keeps rolling in, who cares? That man should be fired. He made the remark during an appearance on Fox Business News Network Morning with Maria, after saying the US-Mexico-Canada agreement, which Mr. Trump signed during a White House ceremony last Wednesday, made a recession in 2020 almost physically impossible. And the host asked if the spread of the coronavirus could offset the gains he predicted the deal would bring. First of all, every American heart goes out to the victims of the coronavirus. So I don't want to talk about a victory lap over a very unfortunate, very malignant disease, but the fact is it does give businesses yet another thing to consider when they go through their review of their supply chain. Oh dear. Another one facing massive cuts and downturns is the BBC. And it announced plans to lay off 450 employees in its news division, should be lies division, with a number of flagship shows and services being scaled back in a bid to save £80 million, which is $104 million, by March 2022. Now, the BBC has already acknowledged plans to axe BBC Two News, the Victoria Derbyshire show, but staff today were briefed on the full cost-saving proposals by Fran Unsworth, who's the head of News and Current Affairs. Now, the 450 job cuts represents 7.5% of the BBC's 6,000-strong workforce. And under the plans, the BBC is going to pool its resources so journalists serve different programmes and platforms, including TV, radio and online. Where have we heard that before? Well, we're going to lay people off, but you can stay, but you're going to do 3 jobs now with 1 pay. Typical core pirate operational that is. And the BBC said this was part of an effort to, quote, reduce duplication, but added that it will result in a reduction in the number of stories that the corporation pursues. Why would it reduce the number of stories it pursues when MI5, MI6 just write out scripts for them to read out? Really? So now, where are we next? Virginia. It is said that there's a very good reason that Virginia wants to disarm civilians with a rash of new unconstitutional laws. That's because they seem to be modelling themselves after one of those countries where the government cannot be publicly criticised without great risk to the critic. Freedom of speech they're trying to attack. And yet another new bill is on the table, and this one criminalises criticism of certain government officials. That would work in the Senate or the House, would it not? Given they seem to say whatever they like about Mr. Trump and get away with it. What makes them any different? Which is why they've put certain government officials, not all government officials, because that gives them free rein to carry on taking the piss out of Mr. Trump and whoever else they deem that is not working for the system. And the summary of HB 1627 proposed by Delegate Jeffrey Bourne says threats and harassment of certain officials and property, also venue, provides that certain crimes relating to threats and harassment may be prosecuted in the city of Richmond if the victim is the governor, governor-elect, lieutenant governor-elect, attorney general or attorney general-elect, a number or member of or an employee of the General Assembly, a justice of the Supreme Court of Virginia, or a judge of the Court of Appeals of Virginia. So in other words, they're protecting the system people from criticism. And in addition, threats to damage property may be prosecuted in the city of Richmond if the property is owned by, quote, the Commonwealth. Oh my. Virginia, the Commonwealth District. And also located in the Capital District, like Pennsylvania. The highest court in America is called the Commonwealth Court. And you still think you got independence. No. Well, this news item came up, and it's a common theme. It's a bit, it's ironic in a way. It's a bit like Greta Thunberg, where she's protecting the system that made her ill. And there's so many people who have been made ill by the system that then their life gets turned upside down and they end up in very poor situations. This is one of them. Ashley Mensa, who has ovarian and cervical cancer, was given a 10-month jail term for stealing $109 worth of food from a shopping market. Now, the state lieutenant governor criticised the punishment as insane, but the district attorney has dissented, citing the woman's prior record. Now, she has begun her prison term since pleading guilty on January 22nd and was sentenced by Lebanon County Judge Samuel Klein. And the Lieutenant Governor, John Fetterman, on Friday called on the judge to err on the side of mercy in her case. And give the man his due, he offered to personally reimburse the shop for the stolen goods and said, quote, "In what universe do you deserve to be sent to prison for 10 months for stealing $110 worth of groceries?" he asked. You know, when you cite all the criminal acts, let's just use the Democrats, but there's enough in the Republicans as well. Hello, Mr. Romney. The stuff that they get away with, let's use Pelosi. The attempted bombing of the Capitol building last year, which has been ignored by all the mainstream media. The Pelosi involved in the fires in California, fires that devastated vast regions, but just magically missed her vineyards and also the Rothschilds, which we'll talk about later. And then you've got the criminal corruption, the likes of Comey and several others, who are handing secret information or denying access to information and stifling court procedures, and get nothing. Yet someone takes $110 worth of food from a shop, which is not right. But if you've got no way of feeding your children, everyone will do exactly the same thing as that woman. The drugs that they give her has made her mentally unstable. It's just wrong. The imbalance in the just us, not just is system is beyond a joke. Sub-Intel. Now, we've referenced this program, type of program or programming several times, and further evidence of it will be in the next two pieces and also in the op-ed pieces. That they're persistent with running these divisive programs, and it is engineered, make no mistake about that. But the direct evidence of the media being racist and setting the program came obvious this week when the Ugandan climate activist Vanessa Nakate has accused the media of racism after she was cropped out of a photograph taken with her white peers in Davos. Well, you shouldn't be in Davos for a start, but that's another issue. And Ms. Nakate said that for the first time in her life, she understood the definition of the word racism, and said various outlets, including the US AP news agency, completely removed her from the photos, which has since been removed of the cropped photo. They said, the AP says, we have now reinserted it, and there was no ill intent. But why do it? They do it because it then creates an issue, which they can all talk about. Oh my God, isn't it terrible that the white people are cutting the black people out? They set it up so that they get the people fighting. And according to the AP, the photographer was trying to get a picture out fast under a tight deadline and cropped it purely on composition grounds because he thought the building in the background was distracting. Sounds like a politician there. And Miss Nakate gave a news conference in Davos on Friday alongside fellow climate clowns Greta Thunberg, Lucina Till, Louisa Neubauer, New Rothschild that means, and Isabel Axelson. And later she shared an article by AP in which she cropped out the picture of the activists. She was cropped out. It goes on. The Bachelor contestant Victoria Fuller had to issue an apology about her involvement with a slogan that said "White Lives Matter." 1 month before, Cosmopolitan pulled its digital cover that was supposed to feature her and Bachelor Peter Webber. Now, on January the 4th, 2 days before the season began, the Instagram account Bachelor Clues shared a photo of Fuller's cast photo, as well as a shot from a modelling campaign. And this is how deep the programme is in people that are ran by the media. Non-thinking bots shouting racist or racism, when suspiciously there was no alarm or call if it was Black Lives Matter. All lives matter. But that is not where the programmers want you to go, and reinforced to a public clearly incapable of thinking for themselves, as this next part proves. That shoot was part of a marine conservation effort to do with the colour of whales. Oops. That featured the phrases "White Lives Matter" and "Blue Lives Matter." I guess Blue Lives Matter matters more than White Lives Matter, as no one appeared to question that, with many commenters criticising Fuller for her connection to the slogan. I think there was 3 colours involved, if I just took a portion of it. There was white, blue, and another colour, might have been grey. But the woman had to defend herself on the post that day and elaborate then on her involvement in the campaign, whilst there's thousands of Twitter or whatever other platform they're on criticising her, calling her racist. You see how programming works, and this is why it's important to counteract it. We'll ignore that because we'll cover it more. The start of the new decade. We did a piece in late December of the failing businesses. And it's actually got worse, even in the first 3 weeks. I had this piece near 2 weeks ago anyway. And traditional chains are looking increasingly more and more frail, less than a month into 2020, with vacancies piling up and a few near-term prospects for a turnaround. National chains Macy's, JCPenney, Proprius, Express and Pier 1 Imports, as well as other retailers, have collectively announced, and this is by the 22nd of January, 1,218 store closures this year. Gone. And that's why I think Tuesday's State of the Union was disappointing. Can't sustain losing 1,200 stores in the first 3 weeks of a new year. You're talking a minimum of 12,000 jobs, 10 per store. Most stores there'll be double that. Final piece of the sub-intel, and this is a far more significant move than people realise. When you consider it was the UK that created Israel, and yes, they did. It was never there to begin with. The UK last week called in Israel to immediately halt illegal settlements expansion in the occupied West Bank. That is a major move. Major move. In an official statement, the British consulate in Jerusalem stressed that the Jewish settlements were illegal under international law. Go figure. They were in 1947, more so after 1967. Adding that it was sabotaging a possible two-state solution. And on his part, the British Secretary for State for Middle East Affairs, Andrew Morrison, condemned the Israeli government's plans to extend and build new settlement units in the West Bank. Now, the Israeli settlements are considered illegal by the European Union and also the fake United Nations. You know, United Nations has been going there 70 years. Israel has been there 73 years. And they've never sanctioned them once. Not once. So the United Nations is not fit for purpose. They're all right going in as alleged peacekeepers into African villages and forcing the people there into vaccines. But what about the Palestinian people? So the UN has published data showing a 45% increase in the demolition and confiscation of Palestinian structures in the West Bank during 2019. And they did what? Nothing. Nobody does anything. And that's why it's major that the UK, of all countries, which created Israel, is now speaking out. It's a major shift. A breaking of the chain of the factions and control system. Now, on Sunday, the Israeli government approved the construction of 1,936 housing units in the occupied West Bank. A total of 786 units received the final endorsement including 258 that are to be built in Haresha, which is an illegal outpost west of the city of Ramallah on the West Bank. And roughly 650,000 Israeli Jews currently live in more than 100 settlements that has been built since 1967 in land that doesn't belong to them. It never did. Now, the Palestinians want these territories back, along with the Gaza Strip, for the establishment of a future Palestinian state. Intel, like I said, it's a bit thin because of certain sensitivities that are going on, not only in this country, but many other countries currently. And hopefully, whilst next week will be From Russia with Love 3, we will have an extended intel to report back of what is going on currently. But this news item popped up, which is kind of linked in a way to the Anna von Reitz story. Heirs to the Austrian branch of the Rothschilds banking dynasty have accused the city of Vienna of perpetuating Nazi Aryanization laws. The Aryans were not Nazis, jackasses. By plundering a long-forgotten charitable trust. Oh my. This was set up in 1905, apparently, to endow the Austrian capital with pioneering psychiatric hospitals. I think some members will get where I'm going with this. And the case of over $110 million in the trust is one of the largest ever restitution claims contested by the descendants of Nazi victims. Though it's highly unusual in that it is a dispute over charitable assets. Desperation much? And the lawsuit accuses the municipality of conspiring in recent years to sell valuable property from the Nathaniel Freiherr von Rothschild Foundation for the Mentally Ill to itself at grossly undervalued prices, including a late Baroque palace that was one of the world's earliest centres of mental health treatment, and amending the charity's deeds to make the city the sole beneficiary of its assets. Oh my, someone's done to the Rothschilds what they've done to the rest of the world, if that's correct. The city is completing what was done in 1938, said Wolf Gordian Hauser, a lawyer representing the heirs, referring to the Nazi confiscation of the Austrian Rothschilds' assets and bequests following the annexation of Austria by Germany, which was done by the Jewish people. Nazis, National Zionists. Oops. Now, Austria is no stranger to legal claims from the families of its once thriving Jewish community, though it has so far been priceless cultural artefacts such as Klimt's portrait of Adele Bloch Bauer. Bauer is Rothschild's real name. Rothschilds is a title. Bayer, Bauer, Rothschild, that have been the subject of an often deeply uncomfortable reckoning with the country's past. So that's what the Rothschilds are up to. It's another sign of sheer desperation and further signs of their panic, and further proof of what we've been saying in this show. They are running out of options and seeking every measure to stay afloat, looting countries like Ukraine and Venezuela, It only goes so far in their world. That costs billions of dollars per day. You can't sustain it with no new money. And the only person they can get new money off is the trust. But what this piece also raises is, since when have the Rothschilds been interested in people's mental health? Like, since when have they been interested in people other than harvesting from them? Like, never. They haven't taken care of their own mental health issues, never mind anybody else's. And what I suspect this is, these were the first mental hospitals as part of the first setup of MK Ultra. 1905. Which makes far more sense than Rothschilds supporting people's health, mental or otherwise. This is final piece before we go into a music break and then the op-eds. And it's an update to the state of the world as it is today. Our world has collapsed now on all levels. Whether it's the government, business, banking, military, agents or agencies. And our world hangs in the balance, and it's being propped up by illusion and delusion. You will see an increase in banking glitches, more political theatre, more fake news events like the ever-repeating story out of London of terrorist stabbings, of which there was another one there last week, which are all similar and are the same as the previous events alleged to have taken place there. Change the script, guys. It's a bit boring. The militaries are in turmoil. No one is being paid out on contracts. Agency people also. Rothschilds and the Black Sun are engaged in a financial whack-a-mole. So one of them controls the financial institutions once the trust funds comes out. Meanwhile, they continue to block it, while waiting for some divine event to save them and keep them in control. Those near or at the top end of the system are all still hailing Hydra, the serpent, or calling on their dead gods to return like some latter-day Bobby Ewing program. The people themselves are getting worse also, in and outside of the group. It's happening on all levels. And we have the potential to see many people go completely insane in the future. So, as for THI, our members were warned of this event and have had time to prepare for it. Well, I hope you use that time well. Otherwise, you will end up falling into chaos with them. It will be a testing time going forward. It will not get better anytime soon until it reaches a critical mass or point, and a case of a point of no return, so to speak, which we are working hard on to not reach those types of levels of chaos, just so you know. Either way, we all have to be ready to pick up not only the pieces but the baton to bring the change, be the change that we all wish to see. We'll be back shortly. Hi all and welcome back into the op-eds, some very differing op-eds, but a constant theme of the programmes, which we will get into, not this one but the next one, although this one is a programme in and of itself. We mentioned vaccines earlier, and some feel I don't discuss them enough. Like I said, you can't please all of the people all of the time. But here's another piece of extensive evidence which we put in shows. Vaccine, 1800s, used by British physician Edward Jenner for the technique he devised of preventing smallpox by injecting people with the cowpox virus. Oops. The cowpox. Cattle, anyone? Known as variolae vaccinae, from vaccine and the adjective pertaining to cows or from cows, from the Latin vaccinus, which means from cows. Vaccine means from cows, to give to the cattle. And also vaca, which also means cow, and is a word of uncertain origin, and the use of the term for diseases other than smallpox is due to pasteurized. And it's all in the words, or the name, as they say, and thanks to one member for pointing this out this week. Who is the vaccine and depopulation king? Bill Gates? Or is it Bill Gates? Or his wife's name's Melinda, I think, or is it melanoma? Either way, the pair of them are like a cancerous tumour on this planet and should be removed from society, not being allowed to visit the White House. And then the ultimate in programmes, although it's generating some income for the People's Club at the moment, which is good. But this shows you how far the programming goes. Abby Govindan, who's from Texas, was dumped by a boyfriend. And one of her biggest concerns was how to tell her cat that the guy had both adored and had left them for good. How to tell her cat her boyfriend left her. Oh dear. I love my boyfriend more than anything in the world, and he's never coming over ever again. But how do I explain that to my cat? No, best not. And that post got 250,000 likes and nearly 13,000 tweets. You know, yet if people tweeted there is 1.3 billion with no electricity, or 3 billion people don't have enough food, everyone ignores it. And therein lies the problem, does it not? The programmed bot people jumped in on the stupid cat meme. And thankfully, some of our members are now seeing the problem with it. It's a program. Nothing to do with the snake in fair. It's a program. 250,000 can comment on what is quite frankly a bizarre statement. How do I tell my cat my boyfriend's gone? It boggles me mad. Get ready, Lee. I'm sure there'll be a plethora of snake in fair posts coming up now. This I very rarely comment on superstars, as they're called, or famous people, but this piece tweaked my interest because there's something in the middle of it. Taylor Swift, where she was quoted, "Lately there has been a new shift which is forecast in this show of certain companies merging or being submerged, that had affected her personally, that I feel is a potentially harmful force in our industry. And as your resident loud person, I feel the need to bring it up. And that is the unregulated world of private equity coming in and buying up all of our music as if it's real estate or if it's an app or a shoe line. And she said, this just happened to me without my approval, consultation or consent. After I was denied the chance to purchase my music outright, my entire catalogue was sold to Scooter Braun's Ithaca Holdings in a deal that I'm told was funded by, quote, the Soros family, 23 Capital, yes, that's the DNA people, and the Carlyle Group. Bush. Oops. And this is what I warned of, that they were going to end up buying everything up, so they hold everything when everything collapses. And she went on, yet to this day, none of these investors have ever bothered to contact me or my team directly to perform their due diligence on their investments or their investments in me, to ask how I might feel about the new owner of my art, the music I wrote, the videos I created, the photos of me, my handwriting, my album designs, and of course, Scooter never contacted me or my team to discuss it prior to the sale, or even when it was announced. Well, that is what happens when you sell your soul, Taylor. It has consequences for earning the illusion of fame and wealth. They own you. We're going to Sweden next, and a piece that I feel is relevant to bring up, and it brings in another of the cooperative business model being better than the core pirate. It brings in feminism and also the damage it's done to women and family relationships. Now, Sweden ranks first in the EU's Gender Equality Index, thanks to certain factors like generous parental leave, subsidised daycare, and also flexible working arrangements. But economists recently studied how promotions to top jobs affected the probability of divorce for each gender, and the results were kind of surprising. Women were much more likely to pay a higher personal price for their career success. Promotion to a top job in politics increases the divorce rate of women, but not for men. And women who become CEOs divorce faster than men who become CEOs also. Now, the paper, which looked at the lives of heterosexual men and women working for private companies with 100 or more employees, found that married women were twice as likely to be divorced 3 years after their promotion to CEO level compared to their male counterparts. Now, in the public sector, using 3 decades worth of records, women mayors and parliamentarians promoted after an election actually doubled their chances of splitting from their partners. Only 75% were still married after 8 years, and after the vote, compared with 85% of those who didn't get promoted, whilst there was no discernible evidence of a similar effect for men. Female medical doctors, police officers and priests who progressed in their careers also followed the same trend. And it's, I kind of sobering reality, really, that the problems that go on are not just male or female. The real problems is the conditions, the pressures and the comparative mindsets that permeate throughout the core pirate structure of all these professions. The system is the problem. It creates division, it creates greed, it creates envy, and we all end up trampling on each other to get to these top positions, which ultimately, as stated by this report, leads to you losing your partner, which ultimately impacts the children far more than the two parents realise. And this is why the cooperative-based model will eliminate many of those issues. And the motto will be, think people, not profit. So that's what drives it. The pressure's being put on the, for the profit margins for the same slimy fat bastards that sit in CEO offices doing nothing. We got a short report of from Africa in a couple of countries, and I'm going to go through it, and I'm going to make a point about Kim in this, which runs along the lines of my earlier complaints of people not thinking or considering at times. I don't think this person meant it that way, but I also need to make it clear. Now, what's going on in Zimbabwe and also Malawi? In Malawi, all the best land was taken by the corporations to grow tobacco. All the forests were cut down to dry the tobacco. And in Zimbabwe, there was a huge drought this year, and in Malawi, there was lots of rain. And what they're saying is they can grow, with the rains coming, they can grow a lot of beans and also vegetables that could help Zimbabwe and the Malawi people. And the report says it doesn't make sense to send them dry beans that they can't cook, as there's no more firewood because they cut all the forests down. But we are able to process them and send them in jars or tins, which is good stuff. Now, they said that they discovered our page on YouTube through Harold Thiers, Thiers, from Germany. And he'd heard about the Man of World Holding Trust and Kim. And the person says he's searching for contact with her, and he would like to present their project about food growing, processing and sending to the very hungry people in the neighbourhood. He said, I've been in Africa from 2012, since first in the West and the last 5 years in the East. And said nobody in any Western countries wants the African people to be healthy, prosperous and happy. The Rockefellers Foundation designed GMO maize to depopulate Africa. Yes, there is evidence of that. All vaccines are tested here on the children. Yes, we are aware of that, and we've highlighted it. The African people need to get hold of the UN and tell them to sort it out, or throw them all out of the country permanently. The UN are a threat to your very survival in all African countries. They're not there for peace. Well, maybe they are. A piece of this and a piece of that, a bit like the Israelis. And all the poisonous food products like Nestle, milk, palm oil, GMO crops, there's banned pesticides and herbicides being used, medical drugs without any clinical trial, are all in these African countries. And they said many good things can be done. I would like to invite people who can assist us to realise a good project. We need money for food, processing plants, transportation and all the necessary concessions and permits. And they went on to say, I don't and we don't need any profit, but everyone who works has to be paid, and the time of slavery is over, but not for many African people. You know, it's sickening really, and it goes back to the previous piece, that 250,000 can chime in over a poor cat, and yet the African people are being ignored on a daily basis. It's all about priorities, isn't it? And that's why I said we're part of the problem. We don't care enough. We've ignored the plights of people for far too long until it happens to us. Then everyone screams, "Brew murder, you'll have to do something." Well, we should be doing something whether you've got the 5 basics in life or you haven't. And whilst Western countries, to the person who wrote that, whilst Western countries don't want Africa to thrive, the point is Kim and the team do. Kim has done extensive work with several presidents and prime ministers in Africa, and the same UN, IMF goons and corrupt politicians block it. But we will continue to press for Africa to get the projects and improve those countries once and for all. But I need to repeat again, it is not Kim's remit to be involved with, discuss or be presented with proposals for your projects. Now the bigger ones will eventually land on Kim's desk, or someone Kim appoints to deal with that. You know, Kim deals with and at the level of CEOs of banks, financial institutions, presidents, prime ministers, heads of state, military generals and agency-based heads. That is her level and theatre of operations. She's not there as a day-to-day meet and talk to the people entity, as much as she'd love to, rather than talking to clowns. But her role is to make high-level deals on behalf of governments and the countries, and also secure the people's funding. And like I said, as much as she would love to talk to people on a one-on-one basis, that's not talking shite, and we want to control this, that and the other. She just doesn't have the time, and it's not her role as the guardian of the trust. This was, we like to add pieces into the show from time to time of what the members write, say or post, and this is another one called Truth. A very simple word, but one that brings much pain and many issues, shall we say. And we're going to say it tonight. At times, it is helpful to have a description of the types of lying that happens in order to view that stance that gave rise to it. And the member will attempt that now. At times, a lie is told when the being has made a selfish choice, who cannot bear to tell of that action to others. They do not feel justified or sure within themselves that the telling of which will not bring judgment that will pain them, and so they do not stand up for their choice as a result. Some lies come from a being that lacks self-esteem. This manifests in exaggeration of the emotional kind. The exaggeration is meant to sway the being they are lying to beyond their own, the liar's, doubt. Often when the lying, low self-esteem being interacts with someone who loves them, the lie seems unnecessary. The loving being holds them in an esteem that is higher than they hold themselves. Often when confronted in such a situation, the being with low self-esteem will present false bravado, and this is akin to wearing the mask of illusion, as Thomas has said. It is. People are not being themselves. People have spent, in most cases, the whole lifetime being something else, which is a shadow. But with those masks fallen off, all you're left with is a load of shadow versions of yourself, which is not complementary to the one. She went on, when the lying is a deep habit or cherished mask for a being, they will fight or project onto any being that challenges their lies and masks. At the core of that action is a lack of love for the being attempting to interact beyond the lies and the mask. They cannot love another because they do not fully love themselves. It's as if their love has been drained by their mask. Yes, it has. And there is none left for anyone. When you truly love someone, you desire to know them, faults and all. However, a being that has masked themselves deeply does not know themselves enough to share who they actually are. They don't know. Those shadows have run rampant, and the person has forgotten themselves. Which is why certain parts of our shows and certain shows triggered a bit. Inner work is a continuous journey of self-discovery, but when a being travels through their experience wearing a mask of illusion, they see mostly fantasy, the city of light. For those of you who've watched the 100 series, fantasy. It is a short-term pleasure to dwell in fantasy that will bring pain, as actuality does not conform to the full whim of any one being. To fully know thyself requires love to be given to all parts of the self. It is with the eyes of loving compassion turned inward that even the most pain-inspiring parts of the self can be healed. Thank you for that. And it ended with, I love you and we. We'll be back shortly. The Truth, that was called. James Arthur. Right, where are we going now? We're going to expose another family or group of families. I didn't have time to check in whether how many of them were born in and born to, but it matters not. And I'm sure Russell will be ready to post a number of pieces on this. The Schwarzenberg crime family is who we're going to cover now, and some familiar names. Of course, they like to change the names around slightly. Bayer and Bauer, which is Rothschild. And the family Schwartz becomes Schwarzenberg, Schwartzman, and also Schwarzenegger. Now, the Schwarzenberg family is an Austrian, which is topical, as mentioned earlier, and a Bohemian nobility serving the House of Habsburg. Oh, by Miss von Reitz. And they are involved with the military, politics, and also the Roman Catholic Church. Now, on their coat of arms, there is a raven pecking a decapitated head. You know, these people are sick. Why would you have that on your coat of arms? Now, Prince Karol Schwarzenberg is the current head of this family and is a member of the Czech Parliament and Knight of Habsburg Order of the Golden Fleece. Fleece being the operative word for that family. They fleeced everything and everyone. Ain't that right, Miss Von Wright? Prince Karol supports the idea that denying communist crimes is a criminal offence. That itself sounds a lot like fascism and communism, of which both are one and the same, and comes under the term Zionism, which is what these people are. And in fact, it was in Austria where families like the Schwarzenberg ruled over, where the Nazis, Zionists, originated. Austria formed the United States in 1815. No, not the United States of America. United States is a European conglomerate, for want of a better word, which was then shipped over and transported to America. So I'm kind of pleased Trump saying God bless America, not God bless the United States. America, for the 1000th time, is not the United States. It never was. Of course, Adolf Hitler was also Austrian. Austria at that time was the Europe. It was like the Brussels of today. It's the centre of power in many ways. And Gustav Schwarzenegger was an Austrian Nazi and is the father of Arnold Schwarzenegger. Oh my. Now, Arnold is an unofficial relative of the Schwarzenberg family, and that is why he's been allowed to become famous and wealthy as an actor and also as a fake politician. You wouldn't know politics if he tripped over it. Now, the Nazi SS used the skull and bones symbol. Arnold Schwarzenegger can be seen on the cover of the Time magazine wearing the skull and bones belt buckle. They're all connected. Stephen Schwartzman is an American investor worth over $10 billion, and he's the CEO and founder of the Blackstone Group, which is the color-coded program, Black Dragon, etc., Black Star, Blackwater, same people. And also a member of Yale's Skull and Bones Secret Society. Stephen Schwartzman is also the head of Donald Trump's Economic Advisory Council. George Soros, whose original last name was Schwartz, was worth over $25 billion. We were told he died in 2017, and what we're seeing is a clone or copy. Now, he was from Budapest, Hungary, where the Habsburgs and Schwarzenberg families governed. Miss Von Wright or Miss Von Nazi, ears must be burning at this point. No doubt writing more shitty scripts. George Soros founded the Open Society Institute, which coincides with open source, and Robert David Steele, which is involved in funding radical political groups as a means to destabilize societies, while pretending to represent civil rights or civil liberties. George Soros is also funding the Nazi-style persecution carried out by the secret societies. Dieter Schwartz is a German billionaire worth over 20 billion and runs a retail monopoly called the Schwartz Group. Bernhard Schwartz is a billionaire financier who is the CEO of L'Oreal Space and Communications, which merged with Orion Network Systems, which was ran by Kevin Patrick Power, and he was married to Karen Ackers, who is the daughter of Prince Heinrich Orth Pallavicini, who is the noble Austrian house of Pallavicini. They're all connected, told you. Now, L'Oreal Skynet was a subsidiary of L'Oreal Space and Communications. Skynet is also the name of the artificial intelligence that takes over the world in the movie Terminator, of which starred Arnold Schwarzenegger. George Soros, Schwartz, Dieter Schwartz, Bernhard Schwartz and Stephen Schwartzman are all court factors handling the finance and interests for the House of Schwarzenberg. Arnold Schwarzenegger is really a prince of the Schwarzenberg family and also the Duke of California. The Schwarzenberg family serves the Roman Catholic House of Habsburg as Knights of the Order of the Golden Fleece. The Habsburg family serves the black nobility of Italy as Knights of the Order of Malta. Anna von Reitz is a Habsburg. You've seen the picture now. It's these types of families that she's fighting the trust funds for. Having all of them gained billions, if not trillions of dollars over a large span of time to build up their mini empires and their self-important titles of the knights of this and dame that. It's all bollocks. And now, because they lost access to the trust, they expect us, or Kim, to just give it all back to them. Are you completely off your rockers? The previous trustee had a reason. He was keeping you occupied with your shiny badges and titles and bits of paper, while you, Habsburgs, Schwarzenbergs and all the others, Rothschilds, gave him all the assets. But the irony of the fact is that Soros, Schwartz, funded the liberals with groups like Black Lives Matter and Antifa, amongst others, that shout racism, fascism and Nazi. Oh, the irony when their very groups were funded by an actual SS officer called George Soros. Another piss take on the people involved. And it's about time people saw through their bullshit. Way past time. Space Command was launched recently, and yet again it's not for the benefit of the people or our species progression. It's all about control of certain land, and it's all about money. You know, a space force should be a global issue, with every country putting it in an equal share. Not about one country ruling it, whether that's America, Russia, China or India, or heaven forbid Israel. A space force is only required to protect this planet and its people, and that's why everyone should share in it. But what this is about is more of the agency-based goons who have run out of money on this planet and trying to collect vast amounts of trillions of dollars on other worlds. You haven't looked after this world enough to be going to other worlds, in my opinion, and you will be blocked. So the Space Force is a complete waste of time as it currently stands. Now, what was interesting is that it had the same logo as the fake Galactic Federation of Liars. Not Galactic Federation of Light, Galactic Federation of Liars. Which is, again, a bit disappointing. But there is also the badge with the chevron up, with the sweeping line that goes across, which is an A, which is a tip to Apollo, which comes in, brings in the From Russia with Love series. He was the only Greek god to go to the Aria, and later named Hyperborea. And upon my research, one of the few so-called gods, of which it just means higher universal being, or higher soul development, not the god. He was one of the few that wasn't psychopath and abuse of power, and so a drastic improvement from the Genesis, Zeus, Athena, Ra and Shiva, etc., etc. Right, we're going to go into a few quick pieces which will lead into a much bigger piece, and not the original piece that I had, but it will still be interesting. The frivolous collusion, Russian collusion, and the Ukrainian BS, which ended this week, or perhaps not, as they'll find some other way of spinning it out to avoid certain crimes of their own. But at this point, one has to ask, why hasn't counterclaims and trials took place against criminal Democrats? And I want to make it clear, I do not favour one party over the other. I support neither. But where are the trials on the children of Biden, Kerry, Pelosi and Romney, who are actually doing serious wrongs in the Ukraine? Media doesn't ask that. Why hasn't trials or papers been filed against Pelosi about her abuse of power and doing trade deals that is not her remit as a Speaker of the House? Yet again, crickets. We recently had Giuliani saying it was all coming out in a few weeks. Well, where is he? You know, we've heard this a few weeks on Q, which at times resembles a Drake weight club on steroids. Where are the actions? There's lots of words and, ooh, this or that document will be released. Well, there's actually been millions of documents that have been released on the crimes and the treasonous actions of the CIA alone. Never mind all the other departments. And yet, not one major trial or exposure of them. And the question is, why? Then we hear criminal Hillary, criminal Pelosi, criminal Biden, and add other names. All have been stated and tweeted, and yet not one course of action to put them on the stand for their crimes. And we need to ask, why? Now, in all these collusions and trials and impeachments and all this, that and the other, Trump in these actions has largely been on the defensive. And that has to be switched in the same way the alt media switched the mainstream media. and he and his team need to go on a direct attack mode. There is vast volumes of real evidence, not fake documents supplied by the Five Eyes group, and push these people back. Or better still, arrest and charge them of treasonous acts against not only the president, but this country and its people also. You cannot just sit there and defend. You have to attack. And like I said, there's volumes of real evidence in the file that Kim's given you. Use it. And put these people on the stand. Although heaven forbid you put Pelosi on the stand, you won't get a single word that's legible throughout the whole trial. And the same, again, Trump mentions about the lying news media. Where are the lawsuits against the portal people for spouting lies about the impeachment and the Ukraine and about the Russian collusion? They barefaced lied to the public. Now the BBC, upon announcement of the fake impeachment results, raised their Blue Dragon MI5, MI6 based bias against Mr. Trump and decided to point by point of why he wasn't impeached, neglecting to state who should be charged with criminal offences. And they went even further. They're getting as petty as Facebook with the fact checker, which is an oxymoron and a misnomer in and of itself. You need to check their own facts before questioning others. They then did a fact check of Trump's State of the Union claims. Fine. Now, if only they did that for CNN, MSNBC, Fox, ABC or NBC, or Pelosi, Hillary, Schiff for Brains, Romney, Kerry, Obama or any other politician for that matter, or better still, their own BBC, of fake claims that largely goes unchallenged. Then we might get some more truth on these platforms if they fact-checked their own people. The problem is, Trump is like THI in many ways, as it seems he is the only one, like THI and myself, who gets questioned, requires proof, or is challenged on statements or comments made. And yet nobody else does. Funny that, isn't it? Just maybe this is coming down. Hi all and welcome back. I was going to do a full piece and I'd already written it all out and was ready to cover what was said or what was not said in the State of the Union, and which in some parts was good and some disappointing. And the main aspect, which is the focus of attention of it, that bothers me personally, I want to make that clear, is the whole focus of attention is on all things military and war. And I don't believe it is what this country should be portrayed as, and reaffirms to the rest of the world who are stereotyping of America and Americans as a nation of warmongers, which is not correct. You know, I've been there nearly 18 years now, and that's not what I see. Americans have many other qualities, skills and abilities that should be highlighted and not celebrating all things military and past wars. And we have to change that image and the perception. Now, during the speech, he came in and ignored the Pelosi handshake, which some will see as an affront. But what is an affront is the whole impeachment thing to begin with. That was following, or the vote was following the following day. All ran and produced by Pelosi with actual criminal-based accomplices that finally reached its inevitable conclusion yesterday, and the vote was no. Which this show stated would be the case. But it wasn't that hard of a prediction to work out, seeing as the ever-increasing criminal enterprise group known as the Democrat Party does not hold majority there. And yet, despite that, of course, Pelosi and her criminal gang were trying to bribe the Republican senators with funds ranging from $1.5 million to $10 million per person to vote against Trump on the impeachment vote. Now, thankfully, that was halted in its tracks after the disclosure of that bribe was outed in this show. Of course, Pelosi was not content with fidgeting about throughout the speech of shuffling the papers, doing her eyes wide open impression, and signalling to the peanut gallery of all those who were in the white suits, all whilst twisting and contorting her face and licking her lips. It resembled a demented lizard skipping across a hot desert landscape to me. And if that wasn't enough, which it really is, for what is America's third highest position on the political front as the Speaker of the House, Pelosi went on to excelling herself. As Speaker of the House, you are supposedly have to carry a certain amount of class and decorum. As Speaker, you are supposed to be able to speak properly as well. Now, I'm hardly the best speaker, but I do not sound like some insane, incoherent rambler who struggles to put one sentence together, never mind a whole speech, and it doesn't look good no matter which side of the political divide you are on. Pelosi neither has class or anything resembling decorum, and in a fit of temper did the most classless act, I am told, ever in American speech-based politics history, and tore up the script the President is obligated to present to her and the Vice President, which Trump also ignored at the handshake, I might add, which may or may not be significant. Time will tell. But it was a disgusting act of petulance that should have slapped every American in their face. But because of the programming of the political system here, people stick rigidly to party lines. And no doubt many Democrats applauded it, oblivious to the damage that action caused. Now, what we know from behind the scenes is that Pelosi was told by her own people to remain calm in the State of the Union address, with the backdrop of the impeachment vote the following day. So, what triggered her? Not that she needs triggering, is my observation. What she was mad about was Trump saying what a bad state the state of California is in, and she could not contain herself. You see, truth hurts. California was being, and still is, being ran by high-level criminals, some of whom deliberately started the fires that has devastated many parts of that state. Yet conveniently, none of those fires went near the Rothschilds or Pelosi's vineyards estates. It's funny that, isn't it? California is in a shocking state, as is New York, another state and city ran by high-end criminals. It's the same people is why. And Pelosi and crew are wholly responsible for the mess in California. Now, in recent times, we have seen the first American black president, and his performance will likely ensure there will not be another one anytime soon. This then fits into the programming, you see. He sold the black people out badly in 8 years in office. No ifs, no buts. Never mind the other colours. And the next hurdle to overcome, as they, like the black community, were marginalised by some think tank divide and conquer programme, was a female president. And with script-based media spouting propaganda of white and black, plus male and female divisive narratives, Pelosi's behaviour and Hillary's before her has likely set back the chances of a female president for many years to come, which will now be cited as they are too emotional and subsequently unstable to govern. That is what Pelosi did last night by ripping up that paper. Over 100 years of building up the women's movement and equal status, all destroyed in 4 years by Hillary and Pelosi inability to act like decent human beings. And that is the real tragedy behind their childlike petulant tantrum, and the American people, male or female, matters not, to stand as one and tell her to get as far away as possible from participating in the running of this country or her state. And given the various criminal acts she has been involved in and with, preferably behind bars where she belongs. From there she can rip up pieces of paper for the rest of her days, preferably the Green Deal, which is a piece of legislation designed solely to enrich the Pelosi family. Oops. Next piece. This is a fairly good piece that covers some of the things we've been saying in THI about the issue of the isms, and also what is taking place and how to achieve it, and how certain things that are undertaken just don't work. And it said communism is in revolt. It throws out all middlemen and simply takes the final step of capitalism and seizes everything in the country, which is what's taken place at the higher end. It fights capitalism by becoming the super capitalist. George Washington in the American Revolution, the Marquis de Lafayette in the French Revolution, and Fidel Castro in the Cuban Revolution were each the richest man in the country at the time. Much to be said for that. Communism is far different from the hope of Marx, although I'm not personally sure Marx was stating it any differently, to be quite honest. And it is the tool of the rich and powerful to seize everything in sight and pay no wages. It is the final answer to capitalism. It is not its opponent, which we've covered a lot in THI. Socialisms in different costumes all tend to have the same end product. It's the hidden hand again, isn't it? The socialist is the problem, whilst capitalism is behind it. Capitalist comes forward, while communism is behind it. But communism comes forward, and it's Zionism behind the whole lot. That's why we end up with the same product as this piece states. It all ends up with total ownership by the state. And so are also the end product of capitalism, which also means total ownership. It's no different. And what you are observing in our modern world is an obscuring of actual economics, the somewhat ignoble end of taking everything away from everyone but the state. The state then can be the chosen few who own the all. Sound familiar? Capitalism, communism and socialism all wind up with man in the same situation, owned body and soul by the state, united or otherwise. So if you're confused by economic statements, you should be, because they don't have a clue, by a few chosen mouthpieces of the intended few who will be the state, realise it is not the subject itself but the intentional misuse of the subject which is causing the trouble. It's like people had a chat in the UK and saying that foreigners, there's no such thing as a foreigner if you really understood the bigger picture, but foreigners are coming in and taking the jobs and all the benefits, and so let's blame those people who are coming in. No, let's blame the system that created that, which was deliberate for not only cheap labour but a second programme of divide and conquer, so that the people spend all their time fighting each other whilst they carry on looting everything. Not so much now, but that's the gist of it. Since all roads, capitalism, socialism, communism, leads to the same total ownership, none of them is in actual fact in conflict. Again, something we've covered in THI, the illusion that this one's the boogeyman and this one's the saviour. No. Only those several groups who each want to own everything are in conflict, and none of them is worthy of support. There is an answer to all of this. If these isms all tend to lead to a total state, then the obvious rebuttal is no state. This alone would be an opposition to the total state, as this is instinctive in man to oppose his slavery, and people can manifest their personal revolt in various ways. This next line I agree with 100%. They cannot simply overwhelm a well-armed government. Violence never worked anyway. So to revolt, it has to take the form of inaction and inefficiency. Now, the inefficiency is something that the French people do. They line the interstates or the motorways, 3 lanes with trucks going side by side in all 3 lanes and driving at 2 miles an hour, which stops all the traffic going into the city, which costs millions, if not billions of dollars a day. So that's the inaction and inefficiency program. Now, Russia and Cuba, for two, are going on the rocks of individual inefficiency and also inaction. They do not see it as a revolt, as it hasn't got any peaks. And the grain and cane just don't come up. The trains somehow don't run and the bread doesn't get baked, whilst America and England, driven still by some faint remaining spark of free enterprise, muddle along. But the economic squeeze is too great for this to continue for much longer, which is again echoing what we've said. Income tax, bank and state loans, all the evils are there waiting, sensing the common total ownership of all. The worker, even in the US and England, begins to put on the brakes. A good day's work today was an hour's work a century ago. Strikes enthusiastically paralyse anything they can, but inefficiency and inaction are the order of the day. Not clever, the capitalist, the commissar, the great socialist do not believe anyone has penetrated their actual intent, and so continue to twist economies about in the hope of convincing the people who strike it won't really work and get more efficient or inefficient. The societies of Earth, whether East or West, are all approaching with rapidity the same end: dissolution by a personal people's revolt. That is what is taking place. Dissolution has other meanings as well. Now, the revolt, which is the key, when you consider all the other so-called named groups, we've covered some of them tonight, the revolt has no name, no leader, no banner, no glory. That's the difference. That's the people, not a program. It only has a common end in view, the end of all states and all economic systems, and surely the people will win. And the long-term solution to the question, how can I live, is never work for a suppressive firm, and do not support a suppressive government either, and work to put us in a position to guarantee that the leaders are sane. Now, as I said, that piece, with some additional input from me, describes entirely not only about THI and TBC can make and be the change, but I also suspect this piece ties in nicely with the Intel warning earlier. Please take careful note. We'll be back shortly. Hi all, and welcome to the final part of tonight's show. And we're going back to From Russia with Love and some of the comments that have been coming forth. And some are still focusing, and this is the programming again, on the name the Great White Race and the Aryan connotations, and it's all down to the programming. But if you're focusing on the colour, you are missing the point completely, and you are playing the divide and conquer game for them. Now, we can go back in history and produce it in a way that makes more sense and connects the dots. But with history and time, there is always an element of proof that no matter who writes it, that can be deemed as 100% truth. Now, what I do is a matter of putting the pieces together and then seeing if it all fits. Because if it doesn't fit, something is missing, something is hidden. It's a bit like humans turning up 40,000 years ago and nothing before. It doesn't make sense. It means something was hidden. And even the detailed knowledge I put out cannot possibly have all of the truth all of the time, as what is talked about largely in that series took place in other epochs of time that very few remember being there to then confirm the full truth. But given the reaction to THI since that series has escalated, one would say it's hit a raw nerve of truth in a lot of regions. So the evidence are supporting the proof of what was said in the show is kind of overwhelming at this point. Now, what we can do is we can all go back in our own time in this lifetime, which the bulk of the From Russia with Love series is, and also part of the last show on Saturday as well. What is fact is, every colour has increased their numbers bar one in the last 110 years. So what does that tell you? And the questions raised and asked would then be, are they targeting that group? Well, the proof of which is in the figures and the information itself. So they were targeting that group more than others in the countdown to Extinction Day, which is 2012. Again, we asked the question, so what does that tell you? Perhaps they were targeting the strongest or their main enemy group, does it not? Which actually the wars described in the Vedas tells you, the dark-skinned magicians destroying the white race. Now, to me, it matters not which colour it is, whether it was the great black race, the great red race, or the great yellow race, that taught the better practices and then went around the world teaching a better way and supporting non-violence. I would support that just the same. And then remember from the show, From Russia with Love 2, that both the yellow and the black race asked the white race for help to remove their genetic malfunctions. Does that make any sense? If there was all division and this white race was the bad one. Now, if the white race is all about their own supremacy and a white-only policy, which is the narrative from the scripted National Zionist Aryan propaganda-based program, why would they bother helping the other two races? It makes no sense. They also help the red and brown colours as well in North and South America. Again, you have to ask the question, does that fit in with the one colour only program? Well, clearly not. So why should people get hung up on the white race? As our show has borne out, we have highlighted the plight of all colours in many countries around the world. We covered Malawi and Zimbabwe earlier. If this show and its narrative was based in favour of one colour, why bother spending so much time in my shows highlighting the atrocities against the people of other colours? Because if I was a Nazi or white-only based and following the Aryan propaganda script, Surely the elimination of all other colours would be welcomed by their definition of a white supremacist. Again, it makes no sense. If this show or host doesn't like Jews, why spend so much time alerting them to the dangers within their midst? Why bother warning them of the Zionists? Because Zionists have killed more Jews than any other race combined. Oops. Surely if you were anti-Jewish, you would just let them carry on in their own delusion. It is a problem of it also perhaps being a Russian-based group from the past, when millions of Americans are being programmed into thinking Russia and Russians are like some return of the Antichrist. But where is the evidence supporting that, beyond making a statement like the Russians are commies? There is none. And we have to step outside the boundary boxes that the system has created for us, and we stepped into them. Let go of your programming. It only served them, not us. The white race came in peace, and they weren't all white either. They taught about soul development, of building your own abilities up, not technology. Didn't need it. That's inherent to an organic human. They went around not conquering countries, but teaching them. Helping them with the genetics, which sadly went wrong. The Hopi talk about the Great White Brotherhood that helped them with all kinds of things before the serpents came in and the other Pelosi-like lizards destroyed it. So far from being destroying the white race and its people, you need to protect them. Because if there's one particular colour that's going to save this planet, it will be them. They are here now again with the teachings, whereby we all step forward, all colours, all working together against the dark forces. Final piece tonight is what caused a bit of issue on the page, and I'm going to state it for clarity. Ayahuasca. A topic that has rattled some New Age cages, it seems, and some took umbrage of my stance on it. It's funny I don't take umbrage on those who take it, but I digress. As I've said in the shows, it's people's choice on what they do. I give an overview of the information, and in my opinion, with assorted evidence from a number of people who have actually took part in it, it is dangerous to the vast majority of people. 1, it is a low vibrational plant to begin with. 2, it is not conducive to all races' genetics. There's a reason it only grows in the tropical or subtropical regions. They were targeting the people of colour. 3, by partaking in it, you are entering a world too few are aware of, and like yoga, they do not warn of the dangers of participating in it. 4, the world you enter with ayahuasca is a dark trap for most, if not all. 5. Upon leaving that world, who do you bring back with you? 6. You are out of control when we are trying to attain an inner self-mastery, not drug-induced control systems. 7. It is said that the plant protects you. Where is the proof? 8. Look closely at the concept of what you're doing. With self-development, you can visit most worlds, not just the astral layer. 9. It is escapism from realities you won't face here. Again, not conducive to mastery of the self. And 10, and here's the kicker, it is an external, not an internal action. And we ask the question again. Does anyone ask the question? If you are seeking spiritual enlightenment, which is internal, spiritual means internal. Go and look it up. How can you expect to gain spiritual enlightenment with the central core of your enlightenment, the spirit, out of your body? Think about that closely. I'll ask the question again. If you are seeking spiritual enlightenment, which is internal, how do you expect to gain that with the central core of your enlightenment, the spirit, out of your body? Again, does it make any sense? Now, I've shot down a lot of the New Age potions, trinkets, spiritual practices, witchcraft, magic, crystals and various other things that came under the banner of the New Age program. And some people don't like it. Why? Because New Age programs are the same as ET disclosure. It is a vast money marketing program based on greed, not need. And people can rail at me all they like, but it will not stop me warning the people of the dangers that surrounds it. And unlike those people, I'm not in it for the money or any personal gain. Our show is free, whilst those people charge vast sums for alleged retreats for spiritual learning that cost thousands of dollars, when you can listen to our show for free and gain far more than stuffing low vibrational plants down your throat. That makes people vomit. All designed solely to make a few people very rich, which is the antithesis of soul or spiritual development. Sorry if it upset you, but that's the truth. That's reality. That is what it is. I gain nothing by saying it, but a lot of people will gain or keep their soul essence, which often gets devoured on these types of practices. The greedy money people won't tell you that. It's a money marketing program. The world currently is undergoing heavy changes, and when one thing fails or collapses, another must replace it. And this is what is playing out now. Not only on and in this planet, but right across the universe on all levels of existence for the living organic being. To sum it up in one word, that word is recalibration. It's a sight to behold, not fear. Internal and external is like love. You can love someone externally, but not internally. When the external love becomes the internal, you are then generating the love frequency, the magnet of love. Now all it needs is the opposite side to have the same frequency, and a partnership is born. For those who are struggling, this is the journey. The destination will be better. Your role is to make sure you arrive in one piece, which is whole. This has been the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. My name's Thomas Williams, and bye for now.